It's been 3 years since the 2017 Power Rangers movie, and we wanna talk about it. I'm Rhino,
I'm Ken.
and we are the Podcast Rangers.
Ranger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Rhino, as always, joined by my co-host, Ken.
I'm Ken.
Yes, you are. And
Nope.
like I said in nope, I refuse. Like I said in the teaser here, we're going to talk about the 2017 movie. You know, it was released on March 24th, 2017. And the reason why I remember that off the top of my head is I'm actually drinking out of one of the plastic movie cups with the from the movie theaters, and I just turned it and saw on the bottom it said March 24th. So we're a little late to the game if we wanted to talk about it exactly on its 3-year anniversary, but I thought better late than never. Am I right?
Yeah,
I am. I'm going to say that is a resounding yes from you, Ken. Um,
a lot of confidence.
so I figure what we can do is we'll start in the beginning of this movie, just talk about our general thoughts, not about the movie as a whole, but just did we like it, did we not like it, and then move into basically notes about the movie as we watched it, and then we'll circle back around to some conversation pieces. So, Ken, did you or did you not enjoy this movie?
No, I did enjoy this movie much more than I anticipated, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yes.
No, so yes. Okay, very clear answer. Very clear. Very clear. Yes, I also did enjoy this movie. I think I saw it in the movie theater like 6 times. Um,
That's You have it as like a badge of honor. Whenever we talk about this movie, you're like, I saw that in movie theaters 6 times.
I think it's the movie I've seen in the movie theater the most.
You
And
would take people to see it. That's the thing that you've kind of like established. Is like, well, someone would be like, "Oh, I haven't seen this," and you'd be like, "Oh, you haven't?" And then you
yeah,
take them.
basically anybody that knows me knows how much I love Power Rangers. So I made a rule for myself where I said if anybody said, "Hey, do you want to go see Power Rangers?" I'd say absolutely, no hesitation, and I would go. And also around that time, I was I don't have the entire series. I'm still missing a middle set. But the if you bought some of the Blu-ray, or not the Blu-rays, but the complete series sets, like complete seasons of Super Megaforce or something, or Dino Charge, it would come with a free movie ticket too. So
What?
I did pay to go see it. I saw it twice in 24 hours because I saw it the first night and the second night when I was visiting a friend, and then I saw it when I came back. So I saw it like 3 times within that opening 3 or 4 days right there. And then I was like, oh well, this Dino Charge complete first season has a movie ticket with it. Why don't I just get this? Or yeah,
It
I
wouldn't
think
have
it would have
been.
been. I think no, I was just gonna say I think it was actually like Megaforce and Samurai, and I had all of the I was trying to collect all of the Shout Factory editions, and so those were coming out, and I was like, well, these are kind of on sale so if I get this, I'm going to see the movie again anyways. They were like on sale for like $10, and I was like, well, these are really $3 then because the movie ticket's going to be like $7, so that'd be fine.
That's
I
like
made
a
it.
drug addict kind of like
Oh, 1,000%.
reasoning.
Yeah, but I knew I'm like I said, I made it that rule where I was going to go with anybody that wanted to see it, and I wanted to support the film and everything. But long story short, I did enjoy it. I remember the first time seeing it. The first person I saw it with was my best friend's boyfriend. She was on the show, Kim. Her boyfriend Mike, or excuse me, her fiance Mike, and I went. She was unable to go that first night, and Mike's a couple of years older than us, and he was like, "I know what a Power Ranger is, but other than being able to like maybe point to it in a crowd, I know nothing beyond that." So I
Can you
think
imagine?
he was just kind of like humoring me. I think so. When the movie was over, he turned to me and was like, "I enjoyed that a lot more than I expected to." So I was like, "Oh, good, 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 good." I remember the movie being a lot more emotional than I expected it to be. I thought it was just going to be, and we'll get into that too, because I honestly think it was the advertising that failed this movie 1000%.
Probably yes.
Well, I think they waited too long to start the hype train for it. It was like basically it was like January and we still hadn't gotten like a real trailer, I think, or something like that. And the movie came out at the end of March. And also it was release timing because just for reference too, that year in 2017, Beauty and the Beast came out, I believe, I think it was the week before. And that was a huge hit for Disney. And so right there, that people can't, the average person can't afford or can't go just based on life, to the movies every single week like a crazy, but like me, or other avid moviegoers and stuff like that. But I understand like if it's a family and it's a lot of money to go to the movies, and
Yeah.
having it right next to that Disney movie, that was a mistake. And also that year was actually a down year for movies because that year I believe was the same year that Transformers the night one, whatever that one was, came out.
The
And
last
that,
night.
yeah, and that made like that I think made less than Power Rangers made, and it's not entirely less, but its opening weekend was like really really
I
low.
think, especially in comparison to the other Transformers movies, and then like I think Bumblebee was the thing that turned that around, but that's also a
Well,
better movie. But that's just
exactly, yeah. But that was the thing. So it was like it was a down year, on top of that it was release scheduling, and then on top of that was like marketing, honestly. And then because the movie got good word of mouth. I mean, I wanted to know if anybody didn't like it or they liked it or not, but I remember basically the impression I was getting was that people enjoyed it a lot more. They're like, I'm actually surprised. Like a lot of people were surprised by it. And I don't know. So I think it's kind of a shame it didn't do better because I thought it was a really good starting point for what could have been an interesting franchise. But I will tell you, I did read a review of the movie around that time after I'd seen it so many times, and it was an interesting article. And I wish I could find it again because it basically its take on the movie was that it's a Power Rangers movie that is embarrassed to embrace the fact that it's a Power Rangers movie, and
hmm.
that always stuck with me, and I'll bring that up as we go because I thought about that again today while I was watching it, before we were recording this, and I was like, that's a lot of that is true. A lot of that is very true because I've been kind of going through watching a bunch of Star Trek movies. Like I was watching the Next Generation films because I just got those on Blu-ray, but then I went back and watched all of the Kelvin timeline, so the two J.J. Abrams and then the Justin Lin Star Trek Beyond Into Darkness and the 2009 Star Trek. And I'm thinking about I think about that in comparison to this because if you throw back to what Star Trek was in the 60s, if you've ever watched one of the episodes from like the original series, it's campy. It is the ideology of the show is still there, but it's slower pacing. It's ridiculous, a lot of it. And I think it was considered sometimes to be a children's show, and that's why it moved into the animated series after it was canceled. But um the interesting thing, I mean, and the reason why I think J.J. Abrams' version of it succeeds in many ways, I get that it's a lot more like Star Wars versus Star Trek, and I take it as being more about the reasons why it was this crew that was together for so long. That's what I think about when I think about Star Trek 2009. But is that a lot of the iconography from the show is very present and very if I had never watched any other Star Trek and only watched the original series, and then I turned on the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto version, I would know that that was the original series still. You know? Like
Mhm.
it's even with its updated look, it still is very much that like their uniforms, yes, they redesigned, but they're still the uniforms. The phasers, they still have like if I hold the phasers next to each other, they look like the phasers. They have their communicators, their flip up communicators. They make the same noise. He's got a tricorder. Yes, it's smaller and different, but it still is the tricorder, and I think, that's when that movie came out, that was, 45 years after the original or so. And I
Mhm.
think this Power Rangers movie, it took a lot of that away. It was there's no morphers. It's just the power coins, okay? And that's okay.
And
I'm not
that's
one of those fans who I'm like everything has to be there from the original show, but like you tinker with it, but it took the morphers away, it took the communicators away, it took it took stuff it to basically took away anything that it deemed like either campy or like unrelated. You know what I mean? Like it took
toy.
the shoots away. Sorry?
toyetic, like anything that would be on the show as recognized as like something that could be sold as a toy
I don't even know
outright.
because I was thinking about this while I was watching this today, okay? And I didn't have this conversation with you ahead of time. So let me know what you think about this. So
Okay.
they have, they find the coins in this movie and they are all the color-coded coins, which, and that's fine and good. All right, so for me, I always thought the morpher, which is this silver box, is kind of like the thing that harnesses the power of those coins, and it enables
Mhm.
them to be, use this mystical power or whatever
The
it is.
coin isn't the powerful like isn't the complete thing. Like you need both to
Right.
be able.
It's a lock and a key, right?
Yeah.
And is that's it's the transformer that gets the power into your house, and the coin is the power plant. So
Okay.
it's like it's like so my thing is, oh, okay, they removed a step, but one of the I thought so easily while I'm looking at it, and I get that they're okay, well, it's these things and whatever. I thought, the original Morpher, because it's silver and the shape of it, like, why wasn't it like easily? If I had been in that production department, I would have been like, okay, well, it's a stone. Like, what if the original Morpher, because it's gray, it's like
Well,
a
they
rock, and
sold a
these coins go
morpher, did they
into that,
not? Like when
Stole a
Toys R Us
Morpher.
was closing down, there were tons of morphers that you could buy from this movie. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not a morpher though. I think they did that just to sell it to people, but I have it. I know what you're talking about. It's just the thing that holds the coin in the belt. Because when they morph, they don't hold up a morpher. But I don't know that. We never got to the second movie, so we don't know if that was an actual morpher or not. You're
Well,
right. You're
okay,
right.
and that goes to the other thing. Like it removes a step, but it also increase like is it almost for just plot necessity? Because that is what like almost 30
Oh,
minutes of the movie.
okay, you know what? Let's pause this right here because that does actually come up in my notes. So
Okay.
let's just dive right into the movie. All right. I kind of what I did is when I watched, I just wrote down anything that came to mind while I was watching it. How do your notes work?
They're so I mean they're mostly in chronological order though, but like my first thing is just Elizabeth Banks tops is just like that's I have an arrow that goes to tops because I think she might be the best part of this movie, but then everything else is pretty much chronological.
Okay. Yeah. Well, she's in the opening scene, so I mean, more like we don't know. The actress
So
might
like
not have been there. Her voice is there.
that movie the movie just kind of starts, right? And
It's
you're
got the
in it.
ding 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 that soundtrack, the score.
Yeah, and it's like you're seeing like Zordon and like he's a ranger and which we had heard about in the show like he talked about like when he had powers but you're
Well,
actually
I
seeing
don't
it.
know that he was a Power Ranger. He just was a warrior, though, because you never see him morphed. He never talks about being morphed or being a Power Ranger, but he was a warrior. Yeah.
Okay. But like to actually see that and make like have that be some sort of like visual interpretation and then see another ranger and then seeing them die um
Well,
but
we've
entrust
also
to him.
yeah.
Go ahead.
We've never even seen. You're talking about a scene that's been alluded to. We know there was a battle because it
Right.
left Zordon in the command center on Earth, and Rita was banished or whatever, and somehow she ended up in the moon. So, that's a scene. When I was a kid in high school, I wrote like a fan fiction about like what I would. I went to film school because someday I wanted to make a Power Rangers movie. So I am. When this was getting made, I thought, well, my dream's dead. But I just thought, that part of the thing I wrote when I wrote a treatment was about a scene that took place on Earth between Rita and Zordon at the beginning of the movie. Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't. It was similar to this. It was a
Was
showdown
she a
between them.
was she the
She was
green
not a
ranger?
Green Ranger. No, that's original this movie. Tell me your thoughts. How you feel about that?
I really love it. Like,
Hmm.
so the idea of in the original show, Rita creating her own ranger to be her warrior to fight the Power Rangers was always like a cool thing. Like the Green with Evil thing. That was the VHS I had of that show when I was younger.
Yeah,
Like my neighbor was like, "Hey, I got you this. You like Power Rangers? Here's some nonsense." And I was like,
just the
"Oh,
same
this is
neighbor
the
that
greatest."
stole your toys.
No, 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 no. This was
Oh,
like the babysitter neighbor who was like, "You
okay.
like VHS tapes because you're a fat child who lives alone." And then I was like, "Yeah." Um,
I do.
she, give me this ain't candy. So now like to think like, oh, she was the Green Ranger. That makes
Mhm.
perfect sense to me. And then for what her visual aesthetic is later on is fantastic as an like illustrator, as like a creator. I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I also when it happened, I was like, it literally was one of those things when you find out about it, you're like, makes sense. I think it was a like it's one of those things where it was always like she always had that green power coin. So you're like, well, how did she get that? Because I assumed it was that coin was how she got Zordon, or that or her magic, how she got Zordon locked away and you know I don't want to say she cursed him or whatever she did to him that made him an interdimensional being, somebody that was essentially a ghost that lives between all these worlds and
She made him into a beanie baby.
made him into a beanie baby, the platypus one. Um, well, so my notes actually kick off before you even where you got to. So
Cool.
yeah, it's like what you said. The movie just starts. I will tell you, I actually really do enjoy the score of this movie.
Hmm.
Um, it's I feel like it's a bunch of different types of music, but I really like this like opening number, this opening theme that plays when it is the Zordon Rita and the Cenozoic era, or however you say it. And uh, I I also like when it dips into that kind of that 80s synth tron Stranger Things type that it does every now and then. I
Yeah,
actually
the
wish it
synth
leaned into that
stuff.
even more. But I
Does that come up again? Like that synthy
yes, it does, and I
stuff?
wrote it down when it
Okay.
does. Yeah.
All right.
So I was a when I was going into this movie, I'm a big fan of my aesthetic in filmmaking is whenever there's like a really cool shot, a really cool setup of a shot. I am drawn to this. What I really enjoy about the way J.J. Abrams makes a movie is he uses a lot of really creative cinematography when he does movies. Usually, whether you like the movie he's making or not is a different story. But he's a very visual filmmaker.
Shot
And so
well.
yes, and so one of those things is right away. I remember consciously having this thought where I was like, well, I really hope there's just a bunch of cool creative shots because I would hate to go into this movie and it just be such a basic movie. And the opening shot of this movie is this like amazing, the shot of like what looks like a volcano exploding or whatever, and then it's like the pterodactyls flying, and that zoom is actually coming out of Zordon's shield, and then you're like, oh, there's this like Red Ranger. So right away you get to see the suits in action, and then he's crawling on the ground with this score, and he's like speaking in this what I assume is Eltarian. I don't know if that would be the language or not, but he's speaking this language. And um, do you know that the Yellow Ranger is an Aquatarian or Aquitian or whatever you want to call
I
people of
don't
Aquitar?
know. Like she
I,
looks different, but he also looks
well, I saw it on a site that it was a reference to that was an intentional reference. I think
okay.
because of the purple in the head and the all that sort of stuff. I
So
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna say this, and it's an aside, and it might be deflated later. But if you're predicating this on like a or part of your thoughts are that this movie is a Power Rangers movie that's ashamed to be Power Rangers, the last thing I think they would go to is that race of people.
True, but they also, the movie. I think they looked into some stuff and they were like, okay, well, what were the Alien Rangers? And they're like, all right, well, it's Zordon and then those Alien Rangers that were there. I don't think it's
I
that deep
guess
of a
like those
reference
are
because
it's
don't
it's the
forget the
only
thing in this
other
movie is the Zeo crystal. So
yeah.
and
So I
it's
guess
not
it's
the
the
only other Power Rangers reference because there's a pretty deep Power Rangers reference later in the movie.
okay.
But
So
it stands out to me like a sore thumb because they didn't make any other references until it gets to the end. But maybe it
do
wasn't obvious to you, I don't know.
we see Zordon's face in this moment, yes? Like after
Yeah, because
he
he rips the coin from his hip and he
so
unmorphs, and it's
if
a
we
naked
compare this
Zordon.
to if we compare this to when we saw Zordon last in a Power Rangers movie, does his like does the makeup on the face look similar?
Yeah, I think so. I think he looks like to me like the 1995 movie when he's out of the tube, but like younger. And there's definitely more to the makeup. It's the same kind of skin tone to me, but it's a
Mhm.
lot of tattoos or designs or something are on his face. To give him
Okay.
that a little bit more of that like kind of alien warrior look to him.
I hadn't really thought about that much, but last night while I was like rewatching this stuff, I was watching the special features and like there's the blooper reel and it's just Bryan Cranston
Just the
in
face.
makeup, but with like a well, he's like in full all the way down to his neck, but then he's just wearing a blue like flannel. So
That-
he's doing all of his lines as Zordon, but he's wearing a flannel, and it's
yeah.
very very funny. But I was like, oh, he doesn't look that far off from what I like in my mind's eye the 1995 Power Rangers movie.
Well, he also ruined the surprise that he was going to be a Red Ranger because he like signed a book for the Megaforce Ranger and wrote from one Ranger to another. And I was like, from one Red Ranger to another, and I was like, oh, cool. The movie's not out yet, but thanks everyone for ruining that.
Thanks a
Um,
lot, Bryan Cranston.
but yeah, what I said. Oh, okay, so also this was one of those things where like I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the suits, but I mean, it was one of those, like, remember the first time we saw the suits was the Entertainment Weekly, like, picture they put out,
Hmm.
and that is n still to this day, I look at it and I think, "That is not a good picture of those suits." Like, there was so much better stuff that came later, but
I
these suits, like
I don't even think that was the first time I saw it. I think I saw a set photo without
yeah.
the faceplate thing because they did practical suit stuff. Because
Yeah,
it's
they
Weta
did because
Workshop
they
that
had green on the chest.
but it was it's Weta Workshop that did the design work, right? Like it's the Peter
Yeah.
Jackson like film like company. Which we should bring that up later because there's some stuff coming out recently related to that. But um I
Planet of
remember
the
seeing
Apes.
those and I was like, huh, all right. Like I don't like that they don't have their faces on, but it's physical suits, so that's interesting. Like they're at least keeping that. But yes, I agree. The Entertainment Weekly thing was it's not abysmal, but it's also not like it's not like a glamour shot of what these suits could be.
Yeah. Well, the big thing was they were all like, "Oh, this looks like Iron Man." I was like, "Well, I don't agree with that. I think you just think that because of the chest." But I also remember thinking they really brought this weird focus onto the diamond on the chest that I was like, I don't know. But then I've also seen some unused concept art, and I'm like, I don't. There was some like better helmet designs, but overall, I think we got the best suit. But um, so also about the opening, I like that they're speaking their like own language and stuff. I, it's interesting too. Like you see that big giant Zeo crystal behind Zordon, and I think like, are they even going to get to the Zeo powers? Because I was thinking about how their suits just they don't necessarily look dinosaur specific or because of the way that they are, because they're like this armor. I think they could have just morphed the suit just enough to change its appearance from movie to movie that it would still
Hmm.
have been, you know what I mean? It would have set it up that it could have been like them physically and mentally changing it versus like them
Do
being
you
like, oh, that's clearly the Tyrannosaurus. That's clearly the
right?
Triceratops.
Well, so they had a certain aesthetic like already established, and so to especially considering what era like this fight is happening, do you think that they got to the planet and then like so think of Beast Wars, right? Like they got to Earth and took forms of
Yeah,
animals that already
Alpha
were there.
says it in the movie.
Okay, so like Zordon didn't already have this certain aesthetic prior to getting there. It's like he
Well,
like
we don't actually know whether the power coins come from Earth or not either.
okay. So well and then I guess going from there, like if we were to get to the Zeo crystal stuff, like how in the show it changes what they look
I don't
like
think it
new
would have changed the
suits.
movie suit. I think if because I think if they had gotten to where they gotten, I don't think the movie suits would change drastically. I think they'd always be like, okay, well, these are our Power Ranger suits now, and those are our power. It's like how Iron Man suit in the Iron Man movies is always an Iron
He
Man
changes
suit, but
the
it
shape
changes a
on his
little bit.
chest.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'd be something like that, where it's like changed, aesthetically, maybe from director to director if it wasn't the same director. This is
Well,
also
they
a
get
moot point because we're not getting another
we're
one of these movies, so
2
it doesn't
minutes
matter.
we're 2 minutes into this movie also. This is
Yeah.
exactly what we were. Alright,
Yeah.
continue.
So I'm gonna keep going. So what's something that I kind of was picking up on this time, and the millions of times I've seen this movie now, because I'm telling you, I watch this movie every time I got on an airplane. When it was playing, when it got into that mode where it was out of the theater and like right about on Blu-ray, I would watch it. I was flying back and forth to California like 10 times a year, and I was like, I'm gonna watch this every time I'm on the airplane. And then it wasn't on the airplane to watch on the Delta movie selection. I was watching it on my iPad, but something I picked up on this time, I never, or maybe it's just because I'm making notes, is that this movie opens with two Red Rangers struggles and like the two different places that they're in emotionally and mentally before they are both irreparably changed forever. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying though?
I've it's
It's
I
the
mean,
two
to
Red
say
Rangers, right?
I mean, to transition to what Jason is going through at that immediate transition, because I have in my notes, I was like, this is one of the weakest transitions I have seen in a movie.
Oh, no, I think it's because I think going into that, that's kind of like not you're supposed to know, but you do know that Jason is the main is like basically the main character, and you're supposed to see like, okay, there's this one ranger who dies in battle, and then there's this other idiot that flips his truck over because he stole a cow.
Well, so no, I'm not even talking about the because I also have stuff about the car chase thing. Like, I think the car chase scene is great. Like,
Yeah.
it's shot really well. It's
Yeah.
and like the conversation between him and dude from the office, like, is
Jason,
like all
not Jason, something. I
no.
I knew his name is something. My God, I wrote Roy.
I just listened to the Office book, like the audiobook this week. So it is Roy, and it's I don't know what is.
I literally
Damn.
just saw it 2 seconds ago, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, David Dunn, that's his name."
Um,
It might
I
not be
like
David Dunn. Oh, it's David Denman. That's it, David Denman. I knew it was David.
so he's the reason to watch Brightburn.
Ugh,
There's
that
not
movie
many reasons to
sucks.
watch Brightburn.
Anybody
He's
that
the
was
best.
like, "This movie so good," I'm like, "You're an idiot." The
Superman does.
idea is really good. The idea is great. The movie's execution is horrible.
Mhm. We're so sidelined, but that so I'm talking about like the that initial scene in the high school. Like, it is such a stupid thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
There is not a lot with Jason after that fact where I'm like, he is this stupid to do this thing.
I
So
I
it's jarring. It's a
I
jarring transition, is what I'm saying. Like, to
I
go
think
from the Zordon thing to that.
well, I think the idea being I mean, yeah, Jason is doing a stupid thing, but I think Jason also knew he was doing a stupid thing, and he doesn't want people to just keep being like, "Oh, you have to be this type of a person. You have to be this type of a person." It is in line with the. It is in line. The actions that we see taking place in the opening of the movie are in line with the emotional journey his character is on later in the movie. I think,
Mhm.
because I think it's him ripping up a life that he's not happy with intentionally.
Okay. I mean, like, I'll give you, like, that is one of the biggest issues I have, like, which is telling. Like, if this is the issue I have with this movie, how much I actually enjoy this movie. But, like, that transition to go from, like, such the high of the Zordon Rita scene
Yeah, but that's on
to
purpose. That's intentional. It's supposed to be like, look at this idiot, like
you
that's why I love
literally
that.
just sounded like Tommy Wiseau when he's trying to explain the room. Yeah, that's on purpose.
I just think it's like it's like it's the cut when he's upside down in the car because he did such a stupid thing. Think about it. Think about it. The last shot in Zordon's scene is Zordon like dead on the ground in that battlefield. And the last shot of Jason in his scene is him dead on the ground in his battlefield, which was high school football hijinks. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's
Yes,
kind of
I
like it's kind of saying, look at where Jason is in terms of his area. Look at where Zordon was. Jason has to get to Zordon. So
do
it's
you
you're
think
seeing it
that's
end and a start.
like I was gonna say ironic contrast, but it's not ironic
Well,
contrast. It's
it's an
just
on purpose contrast though. It's definitely on
yeah.
purpose. Like, but I do because I also love that it's like that cut to. Although it is weird to look at Power Rangers written without a lightning bolt or anything in between it, especially since they left enough space to have the lightning bolt. And let's stop for a second, really quick. It When I talk about things that annoy me about this movie not embracing, one of them is the lightning bolt. You took one of the most iconic thing in Power Rangers is its lightning bolt, okay? And
Mhm.
you made it the Flash lightning bolt for some stupid reason, and, like, as if we were gonna see it in the movie at some point, which we do because it's them doodling on the paper, but that's it. Why couldn't
Or
they have
flipping it
doodled
back.
the lightning bolt like the one in the show? That makes
I th-
that's the
listen,
part that
listen.
I go ahead.
As someone, a three-dimensional lightning bolt, like is in the traditional Power Rangers lightning bolt. I'm looking at the one from the Trini box right now from the Lightning Collection.
Listen to
That's
me. I have a
more
metal lightning
difficult.
bolt hanging on my wall right in front of me.
Right. So try to draw it
I
right now in comparison
have you
to that
have
weird
you seen
little.
my tattoo?
Right. Well, I'm saying the three-dimensional one is much harder to draw than the other one.
No, well,
So
yeah, yeah, whatever. One of the kids is an artist. He's got the colored pencils. You saw it. It's like, my thing is, I mean, maybe it was intentional because they wanted to say this isn't the show
yeah,
that you watched
I
when you
think
were a
that
kid, and
that
that's
is
why.
the
But again, I
intention,
think you
but
know the
I
2009
didn't
Star
buy.
Trek film still used the same Star Trek symbols on their uniform, the same Star Trek symbols in the show, and everything.
Well, it's because it was the same one that I was gonna say it's the same one they used for 50 years, but then I was like, well, this is the same kind of design they used for almost
Just
30. So
n no, this yeah, this I was gonna say the lightning bolt is still the same lightning bolt even today. I mean,
right.
the season 1 lightning bolt is different than the one that came after like Zeo and forward is a different lightning bolt. Anyway, I digress. We're gonna have to move a little bit faster to get through this in the amount of time we have left because we've already spent 30 minutes on the first 2 minutes of this movie. So, um, okay, so 2 Red Rangers. I agree with you. I really do like the opening shot with Jason and how it was shot because I really do like that spinning shot in the truck, like even to the dump truck backing out and the lights turn on and all that stuff. Um, so I think they could they d I what I wrote down here too is it's because this is right after the opening, like, where it says Power Rangers. I think they did a good job of making this movie very emotional, having it be things that teenagers can, like, nowadays could relate to because of, like, why Kimberly's there, with the what I'm not even 100% clear, like, the sexting or whatever it was that got her in
I
trouble.
assume like yeah, or she sent a picture of whoever was doing that to her.
No, no, no. The girl, like, had nudes of herself or something and shared it with Kimberly, and then Kimberly showed it to a guy. So basically, Kimberly was the one who spread nudes of this girl around school. Is what I take from it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so I don't think I think it was like a Vanessa Hudgens situation.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, it's a High School Musical. The girl in High School Musical when her nudes got leaked and she was like
I mean,
so
I'm aware
young.
who
So
she
sad.
is, um, but okay, no. So continue because it's
So okay, so I said I enjoyed how
the
Jason's story, his entire arc is really about he just feels like he's in this thing in his life that everyone is like, "Oh, I know," and he says it later in the movie. You know exactly who I am. Like, it's about being like, "Well, you're the stereotypical high school quarterback who's going to be whatever, and his parents want you to do this and that." And I think he's in that moment where he's like, "I don't know that this is who I want to be," and rather than and nobody ever asks him. It's just him having to
right.
fit into these like pre-assigned roles and stuff like that. So I said
And
I
it
enjoyed that.
it takes someone who it can't necessarily fit into any specific role to recognize the things about him that are different because he is so different.
Well, I wrote I feel like I relate to his thing because I had a situation where like my older brother and then my sisters beneath me, like my older brother had some like just a great person and stuff. He just had some like issues learning as he went up. I don't know how to say it. Like we think he well we could just ask him, but we think he might have actually been dyslexic.
Mhm.
And stuff. And then my younger sister also, like, when it was just a whole thing. And and they're good. They didn't like fail anything like that, but they required like extra attention in school. And I was just somebody who was just was very easy for me. And so like it always upset me that like it was great for my older and younger sister to have like a C, and if I had a B, it was unacceptable. And so it was one of
Gotcha.
those, like, I relate to it in that way where and then also I was heavily involved in like activities in school, like student government and like drama club and sports and stuff like that. I almost said a bad word. Um, so it always, you feel that pressure when you're involved in that, a lot of stuff, and people are like, well, you chose to do this, but also you're like, well, yeah, I want to do this and I want to enjoy this. But then like when you start doing stuff, you kind of like, everybody expects something of you, and because you do certain stuff, they assume you're a certain person, and then they expect you to be that person. But
You're under.
anyway, yeah. And so um I said, I feel like that role for Jason in this movie is a relatable, like, high school feeling. You know what I mean? When you're
Mhm.
expected to be this thing, and you've got, especially when you're like close to being a senior, you've got that, you know, well, this is your ride for the rest of your life. You're like, well, you're 17 years old. What are you gonna do? Um,
Right.
and then we move into the school, and right away when you see RJ Cyler, who's playing Billy, I always think, for me, RJ Cyler and Becky G are the two standouts in this movie. Not that I don't enjoy them all, but they're the standouts for me.
I think RJ is tops for me.
Hmm.
Not to like speak
No,
negatively
no, I
about anyone,
agree.
because I
I
love the entire team a lot. Like, my favorite character from this is not any of that. It's Zach, but that's for different reasons. But RJ, I think, is in just in terms of like acting,
Zach
like
is your favorite in this movie.
there's certain elements of him where I appreciate what is very like almost understated to him.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and that might come into like when I was like a resident coordinator, resident assistant. Like, there are certain tendencies that he has that I was like, oh, they're going for this, but they don't necessarily push it forward so much.
Hmm.
Um, but RJ, like, I mean, are we to assume like he's on the spectrum? Yes.
He says it in the movie, yeah. And then
Okay.
Jason makes the joke about saying, "What is that? A workout like Tybo?"
So, like, that I appreciate much more. Like, having individuals in my family who are on the spectrum, like, to have them have a character who is so awesome in the entirety of the movie, like the reason that they're able to do the things that they do later on
Hmm.
derived from this character, like, struck me like much more emotionally than I think like
Oh,
anything
100%.
else in this movie
100%.
did. Just because, like, like my nephew on the spectrum, and to be like, oh, he definitely has a character who can be like, he can not necessarily represent him, but like associate with maybe.
Well,
Um,
that's
and
I think that's the nice part they took from the show, is that, the show always had people Alpha makes the line in the movie about different colored coins, different colored things, different colored kids, and that's, I always think, but like, this movie kind of brought that up to the next level, where it
mhm,
was like, it's not just because, I think that's a fundamental thing. I know it's embarrassing to say this, but not embarrassing. I don't know why I was saying I'm embarrassed by this, but I was like, my teacher always used to call us latchkey kids because we're the generation of kids whose parents worked full time, and so we had to like undo
yep,
the latch. It's a term. It's a term for the generation from where we come from. But and so I think that a lot of us, some of us, I think, were, you know, a lot of upbringing is influenced by what we saw, and I think one of those, I think a fundamental thing for me was this show that had people of all different, backgrounds and shapes and sizes and colors and everything that came into it. And then you think, like, it made me think nothing of it later in life, because you're just like, well, it was the first time I'd seen something where it was like, well, this represents a lot of different types of people without consciously knowing it was doing that. It wasn't till like 5 or 6 years into the show that I even realized that there was always different
for
ethnicities in the show.
diversity.
Yeah, I just was like, "Oh, that's the world." Da da da. And then what's nice about this movie is it brings into the next level of being, well, there's like you said, somebody on the spectrum, and then we have an LGBTQ um, character in here as well, and so I think that's a nice thing about this show. It was one of those where it's reflective of the world you grew up in. I think in a children's show, and that's always nice.
Right.
Um. So anyway, so we're gonna have to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving.
I know we're trying, but there's stuff to talk about, so I don't know. This is what we got.
Um.
Also,
Okay.
did not realize that's what latchkey meant, and
Oh, yeah,
that just
it refers to, I guess it refers to you going up to a house and having to undo the latch to go through the backyard, to go
I
like
had
the
to
latch of a
climb
fence.
through the window to get into my house after school.
Dude, one
'Cause
time I had to unlock my door. I cut up or didn't cut it up. It was out by the trash. It was a Mountain Dew box, like a 24 pack. I had to rip it up and use that to pick the lock, like to shimmy the lock open on my front door.
my mom was like, "I don't trust you with a key. You gotta shove yourself through the window." So this is why I'm skinny now, is because
Mm.
of these like Metal Gear Solid things I was having to do as a chubby child.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I most of the times was dropped off at my grandparents. That basically happened to me only a couple of times, but one of the other things, so when we're still meeting all the characters, I know it's 40 minutes into this episode and we're still just meeting all the characters. In the detention setting, I like the guy who plays the teacher. I always kind of wish that was like maybe Paul Shire, like was Bulk. I don't think I said his name right. I feel
Mm.
bad, but I always kind of wished he was like Bulk or Skull that was their cameo, because I would have liked more than just Tommy and Kimberly being the cameo, but I don't know how that works. And I don't know who they reached out to, but regardless, I said,
Also, like, who would be recognizable, I guess. Like those two definitely, but Bulk and Skull maybe not.
I don't know. I feel like that's again, who are you making the movie for? Are you making it for everyone? Are you still respecting where it comes from? Um, so I said I enjoy so Kimberly's first introduction to her, what's going on with her is she goes into the bathroom to meet the other girls from the cheerleading thing, and I said I like the shot, and I was thinking about this recently. So they kind of bust out of that I want to call it a cubicle, but that's what they call it in England, the stall.
Skull.
And the shot is Kimberly in the shot, and then behind her is the mirror, and that's how you can see the two girls. And they take out the photo, and then it's a close up, they cut it, and then they stab it on the wall next to the mirror. I said it's as if the girls are a reflection of the person that Kimberly has been. And when she goes to take the photo off the wall, she then is looking directly into the mirror where she has to confront her own reflection. And that's when she decides to cut her hair off. So that's when she decides to change the things she doesn't
She's
like about herself.
actively making a choice to alter her reflection at that point, like how the world would perceive her
Yes.
from that. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. I think I could be wrong. I could be analyzing. They say nothing in film is on accident. And sometimes we do things when we're making movies that are subconscious, that we don't actively know what we're doing. But
Absolutely.
I, I think that's what I read out of that situation.
I think that
But
makes me appreciate that scene much more because that scene always struck me as being fairly odd.
well, it's very catty.
To,
It's very catty.
it's very catty, but the the immediate reaction to just be like, I'm gonna cut my hair. Like I was always like, I don't understand that because I'm a stupid boy, but like, and I was
But
like, if I cut
her
my
like parents make a big deal out of it.
Mhm. Well, and I think that ties into like as fans of the show and now of the comics, like knowing her parents specifically, like kind of what that home life is like, that makes more sense. But yes, they do make a big deal of it. So I guess that like would have much more of an impact.
Well, I think it's also for her. I think hair is a different thing for different people. It's a matter of expression. It's a very big thing when it comes to an outward expression of who you are internally, I think, for a lot of people. So I think that's just, the metaphor of
I,
what it is. But I also
I
wrote
don't-
here I don't think Jason really wanted to be a football star. I think he wants to be more, but he doesn't know what else he wants to be.
Uh,
And I think that's kind of the pressure he's feeling from his family, and so I think that's why he did what he did in the beginning. He was kind of blowing up his life on purpose.
it's I and that is something that happens with individuals, like, as someone who deals with younger individuals on a daily basis, like, getting stuck into the roles that your parents want. And my other nephew, as someone who was like kind of shoehorned by his father to be like, well, you're going to do this because I want you to be muscular and do this and do this and do this. And he was like, I just want to watch horror movies and like talk to my uncle about filmmaking and do all this weird stuff. But also, I guess I'll be a wrestler. Like that also, like, there are two aspects of this where very young individuals in my life, I was able to identify and be like, this reminds me of so and so. This reminds me of so and so. Like the I think you're spot on with like the Jason thing, like not wanting to be
Well, his dad
tied
even
into
says
that.
it. Yeah, his dad even says, you can hear it, like, he could have been so much more, and I know that's a big part of this movie, Together We Are More, and I think there's, like it comes into, like, Trini's character later when she talks about she doesn't really have that safe space to talk with her parents either, so it's it
Mm-mm.
the I think the relationship these Power Rangers set up with each other is very much it's like there's like some sort of like a purity to it and an openness and an honesty and I write about it a little bit more, but it is about that whole thing where it's about that freedom of saying I don't know what I want, or being like I don't want to do this, but I do want to be more, but I don't want to, but saying you want me to be this doesn't mean I'm being more.
And they're kids. Like that's the thing. Like they're so young to have them
Yeah.
shoehorned into these lives or these roles, or to like lock them out of being something that they might want to be just because that's not a social norm, I think is huge. And for people
Mhm.
to like see it's huge.
Yeah. So I continuing on, I wrote this. So this is after they leave detention. I wrote another cool shot with the bike. And so this is another one of the shots. So now we're like three shots already in the first like 10 minutes of this movie, I think are pretty cool. Cause the bike where it's just Jason's bike downward, but the ground underneath of it keeps changing. And I always think that when Billy's mom answers the door and she's like, Jason Scott, oh my God. I always think that is so funny to me. I don't know.
It is.
Um, I also wrote a note here. Where's Angel Grove? Like, it's not California anymore, right? Like, this
No.
is like
So
Maine or Washington or
this
upstate California.
or it's either upstate California, Seattle, or like it's in New England somewhere. Like it is definitely somewhere different from.
It's like a fishing town, right? A fishing
Yeah.
thing. Gloucester,
So
Massachusetts. I don't know.
in Gloucester,
Gloucester.
um, yeah, the
Well, I did write. I wrote here. I said, although I guess when we meet Trini for the first time, when she's doing like the whatever she's doing up there, I don't know, the exercises, and she's overlooking the town. That actually is how the original setup was. There was mountains that overlooked the town, like overlooked. Well, Angel Grove was a city. This is a town, I think. In this, I don't dislike it. In fact, for me, it's even more relatable and even more scary when a
it's
freaking
it's
monster runs through, you know?
it's relatable, but like you look at it and you're like, it's a town. It reminds me of in Resident Evil Raccoon City, like it's a very small town surrounded by pretty much nothing in mountains. So like when in Resident Evil they blow it up, it's like, well, that doesn't really matter. In
Well,
this, it's like I guess
yeah.
it makes sense when the giant monster shows up. It's okay because there's so much space aside from the city where they could be like messing around.
Well, I think part of that too is maybe it's adding to that high school small town mentality. Like it's like, okay, well, let's add another element. They're in an isolated small town. There's mountains, they're on this thing. And also that's why they're like all randomly hanging out in these hills or whatever. Like where I grew up, it was just cranberry bogs everywhere. So yeah, it was like this thing where you just kind of go into the woods or something. That's because I was like, okay, well, Jason
You grew up
brings
in an Ocean Spray
Billy up
commercial.
to this place. What?
You grew up in an Ocean Spray commercial.
Basically, I actually did. But Billy brings Jason up to this place that is like an hour away, but then like Zach is up there and Trini is up there, but they don't have a car. How did they get up there? Not trying to poke
So I
holes in the
wonder.
movie.
Well, I mean, that to me, as someone who grew up in the woods, like that might be one of those things where it's like a very like it's trails or something. Like you always go up to so and so's trails or something. And Zach doesn't live in the town. Like Zach and his mother live outside of the town.
No, they live in so they we had a couple of these in my town, like two at least. The trailer parks, like there
Mhm.
was we had a couple of those. So like I do feel that when Zach says that, but he's also like hanging out in that weird abandoned train car that's in the top of a gold mine. What are these kids' lives? But anyway, it was fine. It was fine. Um, so we kind of moved through this a little bit, and so I realized this. So once Billy like sets off the explosion, and you see the glass everywhere, and they look and they're like, "Oh, these things in the glass." I always started to think about this: is Zordon a wizard? Because he set the power coins down and they made the glass. So I'm just realizing, like, he made that. Like, was he using
Mhm.
magic or was he just is
An
it I don't know,
alchemist.
it could have been science, I don't know.
Might
Yeah,
be an
I
alchemist.
guess, I don't know. I also
Um,
said Zach jumping on the van is stupid. I always think it's so stupid because Billy and Jason picking up the girls is fine to me, but Zach jumping from a high distance onto a moving van, why wouldn't he how would he have not fallen off that van or I don't I get that they
he
were trying to put
seems
them all together, but I don't like that.
he seems like an individual who is from the other side of the tracks, right? I think
Mhm.
we've established like he's not in the same vicinity, but he also seems like that kid from the other side of the tracks that might do crazy things to try to get appreciation from others, might steal somebody's Thunder Megazord for Street
Oh, no.
Sharks.
That's his backstory, actually. If you ever read anything about this, it was that he's obsessed with becoming like a YouTube celebrity or like that's why in the movie Zach says so many times we're going to be famous, I'm going to sell it, I'm going to do this is cuz
Told you to be famous.
he wants to be famous so he can pay for the mother. That's what you're supposed to learn later with the mother. A lot of Zach's story got cut out of the movie.
That's what I gathered. Also, I thought when you were like, "Oh, that's his backstory," I thought you were going to go down this rabbit hole of him being like, "Yes, he actually did steal your Thunder Megazord when he moved
It
with
was
his
Zach,
mother."
yeah. No, Zach
Yeah.
did, yeah.
I changed
Um,
my name, Zach.
I also wrote, how did Rita actually wake up? By pulling her out of the sea? I always thought it was reuniting her with the power coin, but then I kind of realized she has it in her hand the whole time. So
I
how
mean,
did
I
she
think
wake
it,
up?
like she might have been in some sort of stasis, but like I also have in her notes like her introduction is straight up horror movie.
No, all of
Like
her stuff is very horror movie, yeah.
I love it. Am I wrong?
No,
Like
no,
I
I
love horror
enjoy it too.
movies anyway, but
When she rips
her
the guy's teeth out of his mouth?
but like even that weird like jump cut of like when she wakes up in that the fishing trawler thing, like all of that I saw this movie and I was like I didn't have people around me the first time I saw it and I was like holy like I was
Well,
like
one of my favorite scenes in the movie is her when she's in the gold shop, in the jewelry shop. And it's all the weird cutting when she's like trying to do this and the guy shoots her with the shotgun and then she like puts the coin in the cane.
is
I
that
love that
movie
scene.
or is that scene like full of oblique tilts or am I wrong?
Well, a lot of this movie actually is. It's a lot of like Dutch angles and stuff like that. It's all like, you know,
But it's
it
intentional. It's not like Battlestar or Battlefield Earth where it's just like, well, we need to make this character look taller. It's done for a purpose, right?
no, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Okay.
Rita's camera angles are always kind of off and to make you feel uncomfortable when you're looking at Rita. It's intentional, you know.
Okay.
Um, I said I always thought the like van the immediately following the van scene was a little bit weird for me. I said I think it's weird how they all wake up okay. Like were they instantaneously transported to where they were? Were they like transported out? What happened? I'm fine that that's part of the mystery, but it's a weird thing. And also I don't love their super strength stuff. Like, that's not what makes you a Power Ranger, but I think that became such a big thing when Disney took over Power Rangers for that little bit of 10 years, but, um, I think that was kind of a thing because you think, like, the Ninjas, Storm Rangers had their powers, and then the Dino Thunder Rangers. I think this is heavily influenced by Dino Thunder, though, because each one of them had very specific powers from their Dino Gems, and then the
Mm.
SPD had powers, Mystic Force had like, that was this whole slew of, like, if you were a Power Ranger, it gave you powers, and I was like, "Okay, well, is morphing into a superhero not enough?"
Well, there's no outright morphing in this, so they need powers.
Yeah, but
Especially they
it
so much time not in suits, they need to give them something.
I know, but that was the whole thing. That was the show. They needed this, like, I wanted, like, civilian hand-to-hand combat, and then this made them better than it's fine. I don't it doesn't, like, I don't hate it. I just was like, "Well, that wasn't really the original show because it's supposed to be like any person is a Power Ranger." But anyway, so, um I said, I wish that deleted scene about the van was in the movie because it's only like 10 seconds long, but it would have really tied up that loose end so much nicer. Like, the police are obviously collecting this van in that one scene where they drive by it, right? And they're they're gonna find the registration. They're gonna be like, "What happened here? What was going on?" And there, come lo and behold, when this Blu-ray came out, there's that scene where Billy is eating the cereal at the table. It literally adds 10 seconds to the movie. 10 seconds, and you would have tied up this major plot hole in your movie. Major
I
gap for me.
Did I miss this deleted scene? I don't like,
Yeah,
just explain what happened.
it's like after Billy finds out that the Zeo crystal's in the Krispy Kreme. And then, like, Jason is at the funeral with his family for the fisherman that died. Kimberly looks to him, and then, like, Billy's eating the cereal, watching the news, and the camera's pulling out. That's in the movie. But as the camera's pulling out in the deleted scenes, right where it cuts in the movie, there's a little bit more. And the mom says, "All right, the police are wrapping up their report about the van. Are you sure you don't remember anything that you want me to tell them or anything like that?" And he pauses and he goes, "It's crazy how somebody took the van, isn't it?" And then he taps his head and taps her head. And that's because that there's another deleted scene where they tell him that's how he'll lie about it. I think they could have cut the lying scene and just kept that 10 seconds of him saying to the mom, "This is crazy, isn't it?" And tapping the head because it
Mm,
added one, clearly that extra where he doesn't really know how to lie. Billy is like purity. He is the
yeah.
purest character in this movie. So it was one of those where it was a cute character moment. It literally adds 10 seconds to the running time. Somebody who was the editor or whoever was like, "We need to shorten this movie up because it's longer than expected, I think." But
It's like 2.
somebody just cut out all that extra van crap
Oh
and
my
somebody
god.
went too far.
And with the stuff that happens to him later, like, that would make so much more, like, of a
Yeah.
connective scene for him and Jason. Like, if he's like, "Oh, you're gonna lie about this, like, this is how you do it." Like, he teaches him a thing, like, it's a negative thing to do, but, like, they're building a connection. That should be in the movie.
See? Yeah. So this episode is running pretty long. We're almost at an hour, right about at an hour. So, Ken, I hope you're okay with it, but I think that we should cut it here and pick up our conversation right here where we left off next week with another episode. Does that work for you?
Go, do it. Do it now.
Do it now and cut. No. So yeah, so we'll stop that. We'll pick up this conversation. We'll get through the rest of the movie. We got a lot to say about this movie.
Who knew?
So yeah, who knew? Who knew? So if you want to get in touch with us, please contact us on social media, Twitter, Instagram. We're Podcast Rangers. It's PODCASTRA. I shouldn't have started spelling because I don't know. If you can't spell Podcast Rangers, I
It's
can't
like
help you
math.
because I can't spell it myself right now. Too much, yeah. So if you want to send us an email with future show topics or just to chat or whatever, podcastrangers@gmail.com. You can reach us on there. We'd love to start a dialogue with anyone out there listening and get some future show topics going and everything like that. But thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with part 2 of our Power Rangers 2017 movie discussion. And that'll be a new episode of Podcast Rangers.